give you a game now, mate. come and play against us on a Sunday, son, if you fancy it. Get your own.
He was Braveheart, the man who captained Scotland at the 1998 World Cup, the defender who won the Premier League with Blackburn Rovers, a national icon. But in 2024, that same man stood in a Preston courtroom, aged 59, admitting to a campaign of intimidating and persistent behaviour against his former partner. The judge handed down a restraining order. The headlines were brutal. This was not the hero Scotland remembered. But perhaps we should not have been surprised, because the aggression that defined his courtroom appearance had always been there. It was there on the pitch, in the dressing room, in every challenge and every argument. He had famous rivals who humiliated him in front of millions. He had teammates he constantly fought with, men he felt couldn't play the game properly. And in one final, disgraceful international match, he ended his own career with a needless act of violence. This is the story of the other Colin Hendry. The moment that defines him came at Wembley in 1996. England versus Scotland. The old enemy, Euro 96. The atmosphere was electric, the stakes enormous. Scotland had just missed a penalty. The tension was unbearable. Then Paul Gascoigne received the ball. Hendry, the Scottish captain, the defensive colossus, charged in to make the tackle. What happened next became instant folklore. Gascoigne flicked the ball over Hendry's head with his left foot. The defender stumbled off balance, falling backwards. He looked like a toddler losing his balance. As the ball dropped, Gascoigne volleyed it past the goalkeeper. Goal. England 2, Scotland 0. It was a moment of pure genius from Gascoigne. For Hendry, it was public humiliation on the grandest stage. The image of him on his back at Wembley, beaten by a piece of skill that made him look ordinary, became the defining visual of his career. Years later, he could joke about it, claiming he told Gascoigne he thought he'd left him at Wembley. But the joke could not erase the reality. For every fan who remembers Hendry as a champion, another remembers him as the man Gaza destroyed. That singular image of him sprawled on the turf is what many supporters recall most. His reputation as a feared, formidable defender was forever paired with this moment of being effortlessly undone. It's a moment that's hard to watch. What do you think is the most humiliating goal in football history? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this look into football's complex figures, make sure to subscribe for more stories. The Wembley humiliation exposed something deeper about Hendry's approach to defending. His entire game was built on physical intimidation rather than footballing intelligence. When faced with a moment of genuine skill, he had no answer. Gascoigne's flick was not about strength or power. It was about vision and technique. These were qualities Hendry never possessed in abundance. His career had been built on reading the game early, getting his body in the way, and using his physical presence to bully strikers. But when a player simply went around him with skill, he was exposed as limited. The goal also highlighted the fragility of his reputation. One moment, one piece of magic, and suddenly the fearsome defender looked clumsy and slow. The cameras captured every angle. The replays were endless. Gascoigne's celebration, lying on his back, having water squirted into his mouth, was a direct haunt to his critics. For Hendry, there was no celebration, just the long walk back to the halfway line, knowing that millions had just watched him fail. The Scottish fans in the stadium fell silent. Their captain, their Braveheart, had been made to look foolish, and unlike a missed tackle in a league match, this was at a major tournament. This was history. This was permanent. After the 1998 World Cup, where he captained Scotland with pride, Hendry fulfilled a boyhood dream. He signed for Rangers in a £4 million deal. As national captain, many supporters expected him to wear the armband at Ibrox, but the Dutch manager, Dick Advocaat, had other ideas. He controversially kept the Italian Lorenzo Amoruso as captain. The decision dismayed many Rangers fans. It set the stage for a partnership built on friction. Hendry and Amoruso were total opposites. Hendry was the classic British centre-half, pragmatic, physical, no nonsense. Amoruso was different. He liked to play out from the back. He liked to forage up the pitch. Hendry hated it. He later admitted they had more discussions and disagreements than he'd had with most players. Amoruso felt he could venture forward. Hendry felt he couldn't play at all. The arguments would linger and simmer, going on until Hendry gave up from sheer exasperation. Despite the constant fighting, they won the treble together in 1999. The Scottish Premier League, the Scottish Cup, the Scottish League Cup. But the success could not hide the reality. This was a partnership defined by conflict, not harmony. Hendry's inability to accept Amoruso's style showed a rigidity that went beyond tactics. Even when they celebrated victories together, the personal and stylistic differences remained. The same relentless persistence that drove Hendry to win championships became an exhausting force when turned against his own teammate. The truth was that Hendry could not adapt. His way was the only way: the long ball, the physical challenge, the clearance into row Z. When Amoruso tried to bring a continental style to Ibrox, Hendry saw it as weakness. He could not understand that football was evolving. The game was becoming more technical, more possession-based. Defenders were expected to be comfortable on the ball, but Hendry remained stuck in the past, clinging to his outdated methods. His constant criticism of Amoruso revealed a man unwilling to learn or grow. It was the same stubbornness that would later define his personal life. When things did not go his way, he did not reflect or change. He simply pushed harder, argued louder, and refused to back down. The Rangers' dressing room became a battleground. Teammates grew tired of the constant arguments between the two centre-backs. What should have been a smooth partnership between experienced defenders became a weekly drama. Hendry's refusal to compromise made life difficult for everyone around him. During his peak years at Blackburn from 1992 to 1998, Hendry built a reputation as a defensive colossus. He was feared by many for his bone-crunching challenges. His style was built on physicality and aggression. He dominated one-on-one battles through intimidation, but this reputation was not about skill. It was about fear. It was about violence within the rules. His prime coincided with a golden period for strikers in England. Every week, he faced the best forwards in the world: Alan Shearer, Andy Cole, Robbie Fowler, Ian Wright, Les Ferdinand, Teddy Sheringham, Dwight Yorke. These were legends of the game. Hendry's only weapon against such talent was his aggression. He could not match their technical ability or their footballing intelligence, so he used his body as a blunt instrument. The fact that he was feared tells us everything. Fear is not respect. Fear is what happens when skill is replaced by brutality. His success was built on making strikers afraid to receive the ball, afraid to turn, afraid to challenge. It was effective, but it was crude, and ultimately, this aggression would prove to be his undoing. The numbers tell a story. In the 1994-95 season, when Blackburn won the title, Hendry made 40 league appearances, but while Shearer and Sutton scored 49 goals between them, Hendry contributed just 4. His job was simple: stop the opposition from scoring, nothing more. There was no elegance to his game, no moments of skill that took the breath away, just hard tackles, aggressive headers, and a willingness to put his body on the line. He was a workhorse, not an artist, and when the Premier League began to attract more technically gifted players from abroad, his limitations became increasingly obvious. The reality was that Hendry belonged to a dying breed, the old-school British defender who relied on grit and determination rather than technique. As the game evolved, players like him were being left behind. Foreign defenders arriving in England showed that you could be physical and skillful. You could defend aggressively and still play football. But Hendry never learned this lesson. He remained wedded to his primitive style, convinced that his way was the right way, even as the evidence mounted against him. The end came on 28th of March 2001. Scotland faced San Marino at Hampden Park. It was a World Cup qualifier. For Hendry, aged 35, it was his 51st and final appearance for his country. The match was a routine victory. Scotland won 4-0. Hendry even played the hero, scoring 2 goals from his defensive position. The game was won. The points were secure. Then, in the final moments, everything fell apart. Television cameras caught him lashing out with his elbow, striking the 19-year-old San Marino substitute, Nicola Albani. The teenager collapsed to the ground. He was stretchered off and taken to hospital. There were fears he had swallowed his tongue. The aftermath was messy. Hendry issued a statement insisting there was no intent. He claimed he was being held and was trying to break free. Scotland manager Craig Brown even suggested Albani had feigned injury. Brown claimed to have received letters from doctors questioning the severity. He pointed out that Albani was seen sightseeing in Edinburgh the next day. Brown argued that Hendry had been provoked, but FIFA's disciplinary committee launched its own investigation based on video evidence. The verdict was severe. Hendry was handed a 6-match international ban and a fine of 10,000 Swiss francs. For a player of his age, the ban was a career-ending sentence. The Scottish FA expressed disappointment at the severity of the punishment, but the decision stood. This one match shows the real Colin Hendry. He scored twice, the conquering hero in a comfortable win. Then he overshadowed it with a needless act of petulance in a game that was already won. The same fire and aggression that made him a feared defender and a beloved captain proved to be his undoing. He ended his own international career with a pointless, aggressive act. It was self-destruction on a national stage. What made it worse was the opponent, San Marino, one of the weakest teams in international football. Scotland were never in danger of losing. The match was a formality, yet Hendry still could not control himself. Against a teenager making his debut, a player who posed no threat whatsoever, he lashed out. It showed that his aggression was not strategic. It was not calculated. It was simply who he was, a man who could not turn it off, even when there was nothing to gain and everything to lose. The incident revealed the darker side of his competitive nature. The relentless drive that pushed him to win at all costs had no off switch. Even in a meaningless match against weak opposition, he could not simply play out the game peacefully. His need to dominate, to impose himself physically, overrode all common sense. It was a compulsion rather than a choice, and it cost him dearly. His legacy was tarnished forever by those final seconds. Instead of being remembered as a two-goal hero against San Marino, he became the man who attacked a teenager. Instead of ending his international career on a high, he ended it in disgrace. The ban meant he would never wear the Scotland shirt again. At 35, there was no coming back from a 6-match suspension. His pride and his inability to control his temper had robbed him of a proper farewell. The fans who had sung his name at the World Cup 3 years earlier were left with this sour taste. The player who had embodied Scottish fighting spirit had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. After his wife Denise's tragic death in 2009, following complications from botched cosmetic surgery, Hendry could not cope. She left him a single father to 4 children, the youngest just 9 years old. He admitted he did not take the right road to get over things. He fell into drinking and gambling. He was declared bankrupt. The structure of professional football was gone, and without it, he could not navigate life. The man who had thrived on routine and discipline found himself adrift. The drinking became heavier. The gambling debts mounted. Friends watched him spiral downwards, unable to pull him back. The same determination that had made him a champion now fueled his self-destruction. He could not accept help. He could not admit weakness, and so he fell further and further until there was nothing left but debt and despair. The bankruptcy proceedings laid bare the extent of his collapse. The Premier League champion, who had earned millions during his career, was left with nothing. The houses were gone, the cars were gone, the savings were gone. Everything he had built through years of hard work had been destroyed by his inability to cope with grief. It was a cautionary tale about the fragility of sporting success and the importance of mental health support for retired athletes. In recent years, he worked with a mental health campaign called It's Mental. He spoke openly about his struggles. He emphasised the importance of talking and communicating. He took long phone calls with struggling football fans, offering support. It showed a desire to help others, to channel his pain into something positive, but the pattern continued. In 2024, he pleaded guilty to harassment without violence against a former partner. Over 6 weeks, he engaged in intimidating and persistent contact. He ignored her wishes to be left alone. He used multiple email accounts and no caller ID to bypass her attempts to block him. He sent dozens of emails. He messaged her on LinkedIn. He showed up at her house with unwanted gifts and flowers. The victim felt depressed, anxious, and unable to leave her home. The same relentless persistence that won a league title became harassment in his personal life. The court heard details that painted a disturbing picture. Hendry's inability to accept rejection mirrored his inability to accept criticism on the pitch. When told to stop, he only tried harder. When blocked, he found new ways to make contact. The victim described feeling trapped in her own home, constantly anxious about when he might appear next. This was not love or concern. This was control. This was the same aggressive persistence that defined his playing career, now turned against a vulnerable person who simply wanted to be left alone. In recent years, Hendry has tried to change. He has worked with the mental health campaign It's Mental. He speaks openly about his struggles and the importance of talking. He has even taken long phone calls to help struggling fans. It shows that even a flawed hero, a man defined by his aggression, understands the need for change, even if it took a lifetime of destruction to get there.